Daddies don't just love their children every now and then. It's a love without end. George Strait. This is Dadography, a podcast with stories and insights on fatherhood from dads around the globe, dedicated to providing you with the tools and tips to become a better dad. I'm your host, Corey Wood. All right, Linell, welcome to the show, man. Real pleasure to have you here. How you doing today?
Doing good, man. Glad to be here, man. Glad to share my story with you guys.
Yeah, well, we're grateful. Obviously, a worker, a father, and we'll get into your project as well. But needless to say, you've got quite a bit on your plate, and the fact that you carved out some time for us to be able to share with fathers worldwide is something we certainly appreciate. So tell me a little bit about yourself, Linell. Let's let the listeners get a chance to know you as a person.
So yeah, I'm a single dad, currently residing in Atlanta, Georgia. Been here for 12 years, originally from Rochester, New York, upstate New York, where when it's cold, it's cold. So I had to venture out away from the cold weather and came down to the South, Atlanta, Georgia, and I love it here. I have two daughters, Brooklyn and Jordan. Brooklyn is 5, Jordan is 7. Currently, I'm a warehouse manager. That's my full-time job. Actually, I guess my full-time job would be being a dad. And I guess my part-time job would be a warehouse manager. In between all of that, I managed to come up with a brand, a movement called Happy with Daddy that I was the creator of, coming up on 3 years at the end of July. So that's what I got going on.
Yeah, man. Well, I definitely, as we go further along here, I definitely want to get some more information about Happy with Daddy. Obviously, I guess it goes without saying that sounds like it would be something right up my alley as well as our listeners. So we're looking forward to hearing a little bit about that. But before we get there, I usually like to take a look at the guest's experience with their own father, and that kind of helps me get some context of why they father the way they father, whether it's because a positive influence or a negative influence. But I'd like to know a little bit about your dad. Tell me about your dad, Linell.
So my dad, it's funny because my dad's name is Linell as well. So I'm actually Linell the second. So my parents went through a divorce when I was roughly around 9 years old. And I have two younger sisters, and my two sisters chose to go live with my mom at the time, and I chose to go live with my dad just due to sports. And he was really active in my life as far as teaching me how to dribble a basketball, teaching me how to throw a football, baseball. He coached me through some of those things. And so I chose to lean and go with my dad at that time because I thought, well, he's always there for sports advice and everything like that. So my dad was one of those dads. He's funny. He's silly. He's goofy. He's funny. Not a lot of emotion. And as I grew older, I learned that didn't really show his emotional side. Everything was funny. Everything was cracking jokes and things like that. So he was a good dad. He did the best, I think, with what he knew, given the circumstances and things that he battled through on his own. That he tried to do the best he could as a father, and he did good. He did good, and I think that's where I drew a lot of my parenting where I'm at now, is that I saw that, and I early on said, let me go ahead and see how I can do better. How can I give more, to my children when that day comes.
Wow. Okay. You mentioned that you're a single father. If you don't mind me asking, how did that come to be that you're a single dad of two girls?
So I got married early on. I got married at the age of 24. And the relationship, it was great. We were really, truly good friends. And we still are good friends to this day. And I think people underestimate when children get involved into the picture, what that takes and what that takes from each individual. And I think on both parties, on both sides, I think we both could have done a little bit better preparing for children and discussing what that looks like once we slow down, because we traveled together, we hung out together, we met a lot of friends, we did all of that stuff that young fun couples and young fun married couples do, but once kids came into the picture, things really slowed down, and it was almost like we were on different pages once it slowed down, and we had to look at the the dynamics of our family differently. And so that brought up some tension, that brought up some issues and some concerns. And we tried to fight through it, tried to battle through it, and it just didn't work. We realized that we were better off happy apart than trying to give this example of what we were given so far for our children.
Well, yeah, without question, life is full of twists and turns, peaks and valleys, and we have to try to manage those as best we can. So let me ask you this, and this is perhaps more for context than anything. When you two got divorced, how old were the girls?
So the girls were almost 2 and 4. So they were really, really young and didn't quite know exactly what was going on.
I guess because they were so young, to a certain extent, I guess that might be considered a benefit because maybe, like you said, they didn't necessarily know everything that was going on. Do you remember having to have, or can you take me through a conversation that perhaps you had to have with your 4-year-old at the time? I guess that would have been Jordan.
Yeah. So to your point, it's crazy to look at it this way a little bit, but you kind of hit it on the head. When I was going through it at the time, a part of me said to myself, well, I'm kind of glad that they're this young. And I know that sounds kind of, crazy to hear a little bit when you're going through it, but you look for little wins when you go through tough times. And as I was going through that tough time, I said, well, one good thing is they're young. And so I really didn't have to have that conversation with Jordan until probably about a year. They were going back and forth from mom's house to dad's house, and they didn't really, it was almost like fun to them. You know what I mean? They saw it as like, oh, cool, we get to go to dad's house for a few days. Oh, cool, we're going to mom's house for a few days. We got certain toys here, we got certain toys there. So it didn't really hit them until Jordan just flat out asked me one day. And she said, because at that time, once she asked me the question, I realized that she thought mom and dad were still together.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was just this crazy dynamics of we live in two different houses. And
Mm.
so she just flat out asked me, why were they going back and forth instead of one house? And so that's when I, broke it down to her and let her know that, it was something that mommy and daddy decided together. It was something that us being together wasn't the best situation, not only for her and I, but for her and her sister. And so it was better for mommy and daddy to be happy in different houses than it was for mommy and daddy to possibly be unhappy or struggle in the same house. And so that's pretty much how I told her. She said,
Hmm.
okay.
Right.
And she moved on.
Yeah, kids can do that for sure, especially at that age. Do you think that because you had gone through a divorce as a child, that to some way or another that kind of prepped you, or was it more just your love for your children that prepped you?
I think it was my love for fatherhood in general that really prepped me for it, and my understanding of who I was as a father. Because my parents' divorce, the dynamics of that were a lot different than actually my divorce. But early on, man, if you asked me in high school, about fatherhood, I was excited in high school. I was ready to go. I knew I wasn't ready at that age, but I knew when the time came, I knew that I was going to be ready for fatherhood. Man, I've been excited about fatherhood since I'd probably say late middle school, early high school, and I just always have just the thought of having kids, man, and being able to mold and have someone that is like you that you get to watch grow up. I just always thought that that was the coolest thing. So my love for that helped guide not only my daughters through it, but if you want, we can get to the co-parenting. It also helped my ex-wife guide us through this. And I say us because we did this together, even though we were separated. Very, very good friends, like I said, and very good co-parents. And I think having a strong father to still guide his family, I think it made a world of difference to the girls. And I think it made a world of difference to my ex-wife.
Yeah, let's segue to co-parenting. What does that look like? I guess firstly, and then the second question would be, how difficult was it to find a rhythm, so to say?
So me and my ex-wife, like I told you, the relationship there was always really good friends, always really good friends, and that carried on. I wouldn't say immediately after the divorce. Obviously, there's some bitterness there. There's some feelings, that, there's some hurt there. There's some guilt. There's some, all the emotions that somebody
Right.
goes through, not only through a divorce, but through a breakup. And
Right.
so what remained was that at the end of the day, and I told her this, we sat down after a few months and I told her, I said, look, at the end of the day, we are friends and we have to do what's best for the girls. And from that moment on, I'd probably say that conversation was about 6 months into the divorce. We were on the same page and we hit the ground running again. And even to this day, we communicate everything about the girls. Everything gets communicated. And I've had to have those tough conversations with her over the last 3.5 years. And it's tough conversations, but it's much needed that has helped us to smoothen out this transition and get us to where we are today. She has since moved on into another relationship and it works, and everything works. And we understand that no matter what, the girls come first. And the funny thing is if you come to like one of the girls, they do gymnastics, swimming, soccer, and so on. If you were to come there, if you are looking at us from a distance, you may not even know that we're divorced. We still sit together at the games. If we go to the Christmas recitals, we still sit next to each other. And one of the things I told her coming out of the divorce was when our kids look, and this comes from my past, when our kids look out into the stands, into the seats to see the parents cheering them on, or when they look out for their Christmas recital and they're on
Right.
stage, I want them to look at one direction and one direction only and see both of their parents. Because as a little boy for me, I remember having to look and find my mom, and then I had to look and find my dad. And then after the game, a lot of times my mom would come up, hug me, oh, you did a good job. And my dad would stand off because they didn't have a great relationship. So my mom would, sit there, talk to me, and everything always felt so tense and so rushed. And so my mom said, okay, well, I'm going to get out of here. And then my dad would come over, hey, good game, this, and that. And one would want to take me out to ice cream. The other one wanted, you know what I mean? And so it was a lot for a kid, man. It was a
Right.
lot of uncomfortableness for a kid. And I remember that. I remember telling my ex-wife, I said, when they look out there, I want them to look in one direction and see us. We don't have to sit there and talk consistently and how was life, how's work, how's work. We don't have to do that. But when they look, I want them to look and see mom and dad. And that's all they know is mom and dad is in one spot. They're happy. They're excited to see me do whatever it is I'm doing, and they get along. And that's kind of helped us. Conversations like that and things like that have helped us really smooth out this co-parenting situation.
Well, I tell you what, man, I applaud you for, taking into account your experience and then using that experience to help you decide on how or what the co-parenting should look like for your girls. That's a wise take. You mentioned that your ex-wife has started dating, and so, there's that dynamic now. But as it relates to fatherhood, what about you? Is dating a stress point? And I say stress point, considering, okay, when is a point to bring them around the kids? When, how do I deal with that? I ask because I know that there are going to be some single dads listening to the show. And, obviously we want to be able for them to draw from your experience and perhaps some of your thoughts.
I think about it, but I don't really put a lot of stress or thought into it. For me, it's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and it'll be with somebody when the time is right. I don't really look to force it. I don't look to rush it. I have been in relationships since the divorce of my ex-wife that didn't work out for whatever reason. And it is different though, man. And to be honest with you, it's different for a dad who is so involved into his child's life, into his kid's life. And this is going to sound crazy, but I don't know if everybody understands that when they go into a relationship with a man that already has children and he's so engaged with them. I think society and I think so many examples of dads not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And so when they get into a relationship with somebody and they see like, man, this guy's really, really all about his kids. I don't know if everybody is ready for that. And in my personal opinion, I don't think everyone is ready for that type of, to see that up close if it's not their children and if it's not something that they were there from birth to see. And so I think that's a whole dynamic of its own that, people just are not used to. And I ran across some comments and things like that in the past were like, man, you really, really like your children. How's that going to be when you date? Or you seem to give a lot of attention to your children. What about if you end up dating somebody? And I think there's room. I think there's room for a relationship there, and I think it's no issue with me sharing a relationship with a woman and my daughters. I just think that people are, for whatever reason, just really not used to it, and it's uncomfortable to step into for somebody who was to walk into our lives.
Okay. So now you mentioned that you're extremely into being a father. You enjoy time with your girls, and so much so that people have actually commented. So I read an article recently as it relates to single dads, and it said that a lot of times, obviously there are exceptions to the rule, but it says a lot of times that single dads battle with guilt. And so what happens is they overcompensate with becoming a yes dad, or trying to do, instead of one ice cream cone today, five ice cream cones today, to try to make up for not having them in a situation with mom and dad. So there's a whole guilt factor there. Is that something that you've battled with, or do you think, part of your being so attached and close with the girls is a result to some degree or another of that type of guilt?
So I personally do not experience that type of guilt, and I have not had that experience of overcompensating with my daughters. I kind of come off as the strict. I have a great combination. I think it's a strict, fun combination that I have. So I've always been the one that's strict. I'm more of the structure and following up on things that need to get done. So personally, I don't have that guilt as far as overcompensating, but I know that it happens, and it happens often.
Okay, understood, understood. You mentioned earlier that you started a platform, and I'd like to hear about it. Happy with Daddy is what you called it. I did have an opportunity to visit the site. It seems like a very good fatherhood movement. In fact, for the sake of our audience, I have discussed with Linell the goal of trying to come into an alliance with him and get this movement moving forward. But for the sake of our audience, Linell, where did the idea for Happy with Daddy get birthed, or where did that come from?
So, as I mentioned earlier, I have two younger sisters, and I really enjoyed fatherhood. So, when Jordan was born, even before she was born, I was all in, man. I was buying all the stuff, man. I was ready, reading the books, getting everything ready, man, getting her room ready, and I was just so excited. And I was talking about it like you could not talk to me for longer than 2 minutes without me talking about Jordan coming and everything that I was waiting for of a new baby. And so
Right.
once my daughter was born, my sisters actually helped me birth the idea of Happy with Daddy. And they would always tell me, man, you're so involved, and it's good to see. It's nice to see. And even more so, they would say, it's nice to really see a Black father who is so involved with his children and knows the ins and outs of his child, and how excited you are. And they would tell me, hey, you should help this guy out. And they would start to kind of lean out to me for advice. And then furthermore, my friends would start to lean out to me and say, hey, man, I noticed that you are like really, really involved. And so it would either be compliments. Sometimes it would even be, hey, I got this going on. I'm getting ready to do this. What should I do? How is it being a father? My wife's pregnant. My girlfriend's pregnant. And I see that, you're awesome with it. What advice do you have for me? And so I started to give a lot of opinions, and my sister said, you need to do something with this. You need to help other fathers out, because what you have, your passion, is other people need to see this, and you got a lot of great ideas. And so I literally just sat down, jotted a bunch of stuff on paper with my sisters, and next thing you know, I came up with Happy with Daddy and just started creating.
So I did spend some time on the site, as I mentioned. The site says the platform is about celebrating and encouraging fathers. Help me to visualize, Linell, what that looks like.
So Happy with Daddy is a platform that I share on my social media page. I share a lot of photos of fathers with their children. And the motivation that comes from that, from other fathers, is huge. At least once a week, I get a message from a new father letting me know how much they appreciate the brand and how much they appreciate the page and the message. And it's very beautiful to see fathers interacting with their children, smiling, playing, laughing, hugging, kissing. It's something that the world needs to see. It's something that the world doesn't see often. And so just by putting that brand out there, that movement out there, it encourages other fathers. A lot of fathers send me messages and say, man, this page is what I needed. I needed to see a page like this. And you'd be surprised how many women follow Happy with Daddy too, man. A lot of women follow Happy with Daddy and send messages and just say, this is so beautiful to see all these fathers, happy with their kids. And so, one hand, we're celebrating the dads that are doing an awesome job. And at the same time, we're encouraging other fathers that this can be you. You can do it. And we're all here, one big community to help be a part of this change of the fatherhood narrative.
Yeah, it sounds like a real movement. I know you have apparel on your site, but you, in an interview that you did, you were pretty clear in the fact that the apparel is secondary to the overall movement itself. And when I think about how you said that, you're getting feedback at least once a week, people saying, hey, thanks, I appreciate it. It comes to mind that generally speaking, when a dad does what he's supposed to do, that's really not celebrated. It's really not. It's like, oh, you're supposed to do that, And so
Right.
Therein lies, in my thinking, therein lies the cloak, as it were, that we're behind. And then what gets highlighted are dads that are not doing a good job. And so then we hear about this majority of dads that are not taking care of their kids, or they're horrible dads. But the reality is, I think, and I haven't done any statistical studies, but I tend to think that more dads are loving, caring, and are concerned about their children than is led on by society. So I think Happy with Daddy is in a really good space in terms of, lifting up fatherhood. I read where there's a lot of times there's not a lot of resources for single dads. So is Happy with Daddy a single dad platform, or just dad in general?
So it's just dad in general, really, all different types of dads too. And I want that to be known, that there are stepdads, there's foster dads, there's so many different variations of dads. There's uncles and brothers who are stepping in and playing dads. So Happy with Daddy is really a platform for fatherhood in general and everything that covers. Now, with that being said, you're going to bring in a heavy dose of single dads, especially from the founder being a single dad. So you're going to bring in a heavy dose of that, and that's okay, and that's fine, because
Right.
that's much needed. Because, like you said, you're not going to find a lot of support groups for single dads. You're just not, man. And so it's beautiful to see. And I know when we first reached out to each other and had a brief conversation, I told you I was also part of a group called Single Dads Helping Single Dads. And that's on Facebook. It's a Facebook group page. And I get on there a lot and offer a lot of advice to single dads on that platform. And I try to do it as much as I can. There's a lot of single dads who are looking for some help. They're reaching out, they're putting their hands up, and they need somebody to pull them in. So I take pride in getting on that group and really giving some feedback and some experiences and some advice to some of these fathers who really are searching desperately for help. And then some of them are in bad situations. So Happy with Daddy is going to be the bridge that is going to, bring all of that together, as far as the support groups and the experiences that you see, and the motivation and the celebration that you see out there. So I really want to bridge that gap and be a platform that celebrates all kinds of dads, and just bring it all together.
Well, I want to encourage all of our listeners to be sure to visit happywithdaddy.com. And are you on Instagram?
Yes, on Instagram as well, at Happy with Daddy. And also we are on Facebook, Happy with Daddy as well.
Excellent. So I encourage all you listeners to participate in Happy with Daddy. Be encouraged, have your fatherhood celebrated, and also find some support. We'll be right back after a message from our sponsor. Hey guys, this is Corey, host of the Dadography podcast. This episode is sponsored by and dedicated to you. Thanks for all your feedback and support. I mean that. However, if this is your first time tuning in, please be sure to subscribe. And if you've done that already and you're getting some value from our interviews with dads from around the globe, please share. Teamwork makes the dream work. Now back to the show. Linell, give me a snapshot of a day with you and your girls. Let's be clear, school is out, it's summertime, maybe not this summer, obviously with COVID. I know this is a different dynamic, but school is out. It's a time where they're with you. Take me on a journey, man. What are you guys doing? Help me see and feel what's going on.
So you're right. It is different. It is COVID-19 has put a spin on things, but school is out. Dad is gonna have to wake the girls up, and because otherwise they will sleep until 10, 11 o'clock. So wake up. We're gonna cook breakfast. Their go-to breakfast is cinnamon rolls. So if you allow them to pick breakfast every day, it will be cinnamon rolls. They'll sit out on the front porch and eat their cinnamon rolls. And then if you leave it up to them, they will go to the pool and they will be at the pool for the rest of the day. But usually we like to go to the pool. We love to get outdoors, And we find ourselves at a lot of parks. We've been hiking here recently. We've been to waterfalls. They've gotten into the river. And we just like to get outside and get in nature. And honestly, for me, I just love the interaction. I love the interaction with my daughters and just teaching them little things. We'll go wash the car and clean the interior of the car out together and just having them help out with little things like that. When we get out there in nature, I let them explore, ask questions, and they love it. They love being out there. And I really try to just show them different things and different type of atmospheres. Before COVID-19, we were really big into festivals. Here in Atlanta, it's a lot of festivals. There's always something to do. So we go to different areas of Atlanta, different type of festivals. I really want them to see different ways to live life and different ways to enjoy life. That way, when they get older, hopefully they are able to say, yes, I've seen this and that, and be able to experience a lot of what I did not experience as a child.
I find interesting that you said, a lot of interaction. And in the list of interactions, you listed washing the car together. So it's almost as if you imply that if you're doing things together, that interaction counts as some value. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, and the one thing that's amazing about kids is if you do some of the simplest activities with them, they have the ability to turn it into some of the most amazing experiences and memories that you will ever remember. I can tell you, my daughters could probably sit here and talk to you guys and tell you all kinds of stories. And it's some of the simplest stuff. Like, Dad, remember we were washing out the car and you did this? And it's not the craziest of, hey, we went and traveled to this, we went and did this, but it's some of the most simplest things that we do that they remember and hold on to for forever. And it's just the silly moments and things like that occur around those experiences. And so give kids that space. I always say, give kids that space to create memories. And you don't know, just because you think washing the car is boring, to them, that could make their day.
That's good stuff, man. I appreciate it for sure. So you've got two girls now. So what about your hairstyle game? Is that up to par?
Yeah, man. So thankful for YouTube. So it's funny that you asked that, because just probably about 3 weeks ago, and I put my daughter's hair a lot in a ponytail. And I was like, you know what? I want to try something different. I said, I want to try a bun. So I was like, let me try like a tight bun. And so I YouTubed it, and we went out. And the funny thing is I didn't have the stuff needed for a bun. So we ran out, and I'm sitting there. I forgot the list and getting all the stuff together for the bun. And I'm trying it in the mirror, and it actually came out pretty good. But yeah, man, I mean, thankful for resources like YouTube, where you can just type in how to do a bun and 200 videos pop up of how to walk you how to do a bun. But it's cool, man. And my daughters love it. They crack up watching Dad try to do hair. So, but yeah, my hair game is good, man. It's improving, and I'm enjoying it.
Way to go, man. I'm gonna see what I can do about sending a trophy your way. We're gonna see if we can
Appreciate that.
see if we can get that worked out for you. But here's another question, and I guess maybe it's somewhat comical, but it's serious at the same time. So you've got two girls, and co-parenting has been going on since 2 and 4. So you're out, you guys are having a blast, and your daughter looks up with her beautiful eyes and says, "Daddy, I got to go to the bathroom." How did we deal with that?
So the first couple times that it happened, it catches you off guard, and you don't think, because when it first starts happening, you don't think of the family restroom at that time, And so when it first happened, there were a couple times where I remember taking them into, men's restrooms before. I remember one time I took them into one, and I had a guy. I said, "Look, I got to get my daughters in here. I need you to stand out here. We'll be real quick. Don't let anybody come in. Just like give me some spare time. Give me about, 3 or 4 minutes, and we'll be out. All right, if you can do me that favor." He was like, "Yeah, no problem, man." So it was situations like that I ran across early on, and then I found myself going places and immediately start saying, "Okay, where's the family restroom? What options do I have for the restroom? And better yet, hey, get into the door before we leave the house. Anybody got to go to the restroom, But that took some practice. That took being in some very uncomfortable situations to get to that point where you are, hey, okay, we're close to here. Anybody got to go to the bathroom now before we go ahead and take off to XYZ. And so, yeah, man, it it puts a spin on things when that happens to you, and you're not prepared because here you are as a father, you got these beautiful girls, and you're like, bathroom. It's not like you got your little man with you, and you're like, hey, let's go in here. You're like, like
Yeah.
what do I do, man? This is tough, and you're trying to bargain with them, like how bad do you have to go? Do you like
This
have to
is
go? You know what I
Jeopardy.
mean? Right. Like, do you have to go like now, or like we can drive home in 20 minutes and go?
Well, I'm glad that you're able to navigate that now. What would you say is one of your biggest challenges as a single dad?
I think the biggest challenge that I've seen, and this doesn't really come so much from the people that know me, because the people that know me know what type of father I am, but more so and you kind of touched on this earlier, doing what a father should be doing is seen as like, you know what I mean? It's not accepted as I think it should be. And so one of the things I notice is when I'm out, it's just simple things like, a lot of times people come up to my daughters and they say, "Oh, did your mommy dress you?" And they're like, "No." And they're like, "My daddy did." And so they'll walk up and say, "Oh, you guys got beautiful hair. Did your dad or did your mom do your hair?" And they're like, "No, my dad did my hair." And it's just like, it's little things where if you pay attention, I always tell people this, if you really pay attention out there, you'll see a lot of what I call punches to the guts for fathers, even in commercials, even in
Yeah.
things like that, like commercials, billboards, TV shows are really big about it. But I think that's the struggle for me sometimes. And early on, I really, really used to get upset about it inside, because I'm like, man, like I'm not going to get credit for a lot of the stuff, you know what I mean? And then it's like, I cook something for dinner, and they eat it or whatever. Say, "Oh, you cook?" I'm like, "Yeah, I cook." I mean, if I don't cook, then we're eating out every night, And it's just stuff like that. It's like it's just amazing. It amazes people sometimes at just what you do. And so I think that has been the biggest part for me, and the most frustrating part for me is the lack of respect that single dads get. And it seems as though we're supposed to fold it up, fold it in, and just not try to go out there and try to learn how to do hair, not try to learn about how to raise girls. And I get it. I get it from a certain standpoint, that's how a big part of fathers have been in the past. But I think the narrative is changing, and I think fathers deserve a lot more credit, honestly,
Right.
especially single fathers, because any type of father, it's different now. You got a lot more women getting out in the workforce, and not as many stay-at-home moms as you did, 20 years ago. So it's different nowadays, and it's still mind blowing to me, some of the questions that I get asked and some of the looks I get for doing the basics. And I just I don't get it. Even to this day, I still don't get it.
Times are definitely changing, and along with all of the things that are changing, we find that dads are playing a more integral role in the life of their children. And I think that you're spot on when you're looking to celebrate and encourage those dads, and have a place where they get the acknowledgement that's due. So you mentioned earlier, before we come to a close here, you mentioned earlier that your girls are involved in gymnastics and sports. How did they get involved in that? Is that you're doing, your ex is doing? Is that their interest, or is it just something that you guys do with the mindful intent to try to keep them involved? I just want to get an understanding of these different activities and the role they play in your father and your daughters.
So I'm really big into sports,
Okay.
huge into sports, and I'm actually down and out lately because of the lack thereof sports. But I always tell people, if you put two turtles on the ground, you paint one shell red and you paint one shell blue, I'll watch it, and I'm going to pick a color and root for it. And that's just the type of competitive nature that I have. So I think that early on, obviously as a father, you get out there and you start kicking the ball, you start swinging the bat, you start doing these little things. I mean, I bought Jordan had a basketball hoop and we have it in the living room and she kind of shoot and just those little things. And as she grew up, she got into soccer. Both of them got into soccer, and I actually coached. I've been coaching Jordan for the last 4 years in soccer. And it's amazing to sit there and watch your kids, what they can do, And it started out, we would work out in the playground in the yard, and we practice. And I'm like, I don't think she's really, she's trying, but it's not like she's really like paying attention. And then I'll never forget one game she went out there and she scored 4 goals. And she was out there and she was moving and she was doing some of the stuff that I was saying in the backyard and at the playground that I didn't think she was really paying attention to. And so that's when it kind of hit me. And I was like, maybe she was paying attention and listening to me after all. Here I am thinking like, she's just kind of doing it. And that's where it just kind of really took off. And both girls have a very, competitive nature about them. Their mom does as well. She was active in sports all the way up through college. And I got into all kinds of sports, mainly football in my later high school years, and track. And so both of us have, some athletic genes to us. And so that shows with both of my girls and their competitive nature and how they like to get out there and compete and do different things with sports. So it's been beautiful to watch and cool to see your kids get out there and enjoy sports.
Yeah. So do those sports and do they fall in line with your way of doing things in terms of just making sure that you're interacting with your girls?
Yeah. And so a lot of times people, I think people get a tendency to push a certain sport or activity on their children. And, for me, it's whatever they want to do. If they want to play piano, guess what? Dad's gonna be sitting there front row at the piano recital. And I'm gonna have to learn about, pianos. If they want
Right.
to, if they want to do a spelling bee, I'm gonna be there. I just want to be there with whatever they choose to do and whatever they gravitate towards. If they want to play tennis, I've played, recreational tennis here and there, just playing around. But guess what? Dad's going to get a tennis book. I'm going to start watching more tennis. I'm going to start learning the rules about it. I'm going to start understanding it more if that's something that they want to do. And so for me, it doesn't matter what they gravitate towards. Dad's going to be there to interact with you, to be able to speak to you about it, and not just brush it off as just, oh, that's your thing, and good luck with it. I may not be an expert at it like I am with some of the other sports, but I'm going to try, and I'm going to be there. And that's going to allow us to bond over something that you love.
And that's what makes the difference, man, for sure. Well, listen, Linnell, before we close, I'd like you to take a moment and give some closing thoughts, words of encouragement to single fathers, specifically that are listening today. In preparation for this interview, I was able to see a world that I just was unaware existed, different difficulties that single fathers are challenged with, from not having resources to support groups, even dealing with dating, dealing with, in some cases, mental stress. And so if you could just I guess bring us to a close, man, with a word of encouragement for all of our single fathers out there. I certainly appreciate it.
So I think the biggest thing with single dads, as you navigate through life, and like you said, all the different things of dating, and are you doing something right, and the guilt of your previous relationship, and living on the past. I think the biggest thing you can do is really ask yourself, am I doing right by my children? And that is one thing that has led me through and through again is, and you'll hear me say this, if you're in my circle, you'll hear me say, do the right thing. It's one of my things that I say all the time, do the right thing. And am I doing the right thing for my girls? And that has pulled me out of some tough days. That has pulled me out of some ruts. That has pulled me out of some mental places where, I get locked in and you start thinking too much, you start overthinking, or you start, beating yourself up for something that happened in the past, a bad relationship, or going through a divorce. And, I sit there and I say, do right by Jordan and Brooklyn. And that'll get me up. That'll get me up and that'll get me going. And I always continuously have them at the forefront. Always have them at the forefront. Always have your children at the forefront. And if you do that, a lot of things will go well for you. And it's not easy. It's not easy at all, but always lead back to your children, because this is one thing that I firmly believe in. If you do right by your kids, they are going to understand that and pick up on that. Kids are very smart, very, very intelligent. And if you're doing the right thing, if you're trying, some fathers don't have the experience that I have. Some have it a lot harder than my experience of co-parenting with my ex-wife and navigating through single fatherhood. But if you continue to do the right thing and keep your children at the forefront, I'm a firm believer that things will ultimately work out for you, and it won't be as hard. Not saying it'll be easy, but it just won't be as hard. So always keep your kids at the forefront. Always try to do best and do right by your children. And I think that's a good start, and a lot of good can come from it.
All right. Well, thank you much. Wise words from a wise father. And this will conclude today's show. But thank you so much for coming on. And we look forward to building our alliance with Happy with Daddy. And you can visit Happy with Daddy at happywithdaddy.com. And also, we're going to be establishing a resource page on dadography.net, and you'll be able to segue over to happywithdaddy.com. Thanks for coming on today. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure having you here. Today's Fatherhood Insight comes from a conversation with Linell Greene, a loving father from Atlanta, Georgia, who's co-parenting to raise 2 young girls, and founder of the online platform happywithdaddy.com. In today's episode, Linell suggests 2 things: that dads add this simple question to their toolbox of decision-making: am I doing right by my children? And secondly, Linell advocates organic interaction with your children to help promote good times and good memories, such as doing chores together or taking a walk. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Dadography podcast. Thanks very much for listening. I would, however, like to invite you to be a part of the show. Visit our website at dadography.net, scroll down to the bottom of the page, click on the microphone, tell us your name, where you're from, and what fatherhood means to you. Remember, it takes more than DNA to be a dad.